the first Sunday of Lent. We might call this Temptation Sunday, and I highly recommend your reading the second chapter of Genesis, as well as the fourth chapter of Matthew. And to be more explicit, to read the end of chapter 3 excuse me, of Matthew's gospel, where Jesus is baptized. That they kind of go together. So in chapter 2 of Genesis, Adam and Eve pretty much have everything. The garden, but they don't have the tree in the middle of the garden. And the tempter slithers along and sidles up and says, you will realize that you don't have it all. And God doesn't want you to have it all, but you really are entitled to it all. So why don't you eat of the fruit of that tree, and you will have it all. That's what you deserve. I mean, you've got everything else. You might as well have that. There shall be no more need in this garden of abundant plenty. And of course, they nibble at that, and they realize that they don't have it all. And they are not all, and that they are ashamed of themselves physically, so they have to dress up and hide. Hide because they are ashamed of trying to get it all. Well, the gospel, that's where we get 40 days of Lent, I guess, or 40 years in the desert. 40 seems to be a magic number for not having. And Jesus is out in the desert, led by the Spirit, to pray and experience want as a human being. And our friend the tempter comes along and says, you really, if you really are, and of course Jesus heard in his baptism, this is why I would like you to read chapter 3, you are, this is. I'm giving you yourself, God says to Jesus. I want you to know fully that you're totally human and totally divine. Quite a mystery to us. The tempter moves into what we call the subjunctive, the contrary to fact, helping us be tempted with the great if. Of course, Jesus lives is, declarative, indicative, yes. I have heard who I am. I am. An evil spirit says, if you are, then you really, because you're human, fully human, you need proof. So, prove to yourself by changing these stones into loaves of bread. And Jesus says, I don't live in the contrary to fact. I am. And evil says, oh, well, maybe I can get you to prove yourself by throwing yourself off this temple top. Jesus says, I don't need proof. I know who I am. And the evil spirit takes him again. If you are, then I can, if you worship me, I can give you all of this. And Jesus says, I know who I am. I don't need proof, and I don't need power, and I don't need dominion. I need to continue to be grateful for myself. So that's what the scripture is. The temptations to Adam and Eve, that they can have it all, and the temptations to Jesus, who says, I don't need it all, for proof. Now, what are the 40 days for us of these Lenten days, these Lenten weeks? And we are tempted to give things up, maybe prayerfully, and I'm all for giving up things, but our prayer, where are we tempted to wanting more, to run away from our insufficiency, to be tempted by our entitlement that we should have all possessions that complete us? What if we not give up, but embrace the natural incompleteness of saying, I don't know, I don't have? Adam and Eve could not experience their human poverty. Jesus experienced his human poverty. He was hungry. But he didn't need proof of who he was. Maybe we could give up, or maybe pray with, the experiences of not having enough, not being enough, and not sewing certain loincloths or pretenses that I do have it all, or that I don't need. Yes, I do need it all. I want more. That's naturally human, and it's wonderfully spiritual to want more, to want to be more. That's the promise. We will, in time, have it all, but not now. Why? Because anything that will complete us here will make a God of it. And that God will disappoint us. And we will live in the shame of trying to find our dignity in gods or things that cannot give us ourselves. But we will try. We will be tempted. So what I'm saying is, if we could pray, giving up the attempts at fullness, to experience the natural emptiness of not knowing, of not having, of missing, of being frustrated, whatever. That's the wisdom. To live peacefully with not having. You can not have candy or drink or whatever, television, whatever. But that's an experience of a deeper truth that we can never have it all. For 40 days we can not have some. But to give up the attempts at filling ourselves will only lead to being ashamed of ourselves. And Jesus, after resisting the tempter, was comforted, which is our wisdom, that our infinite comfort is a promise for eternity. Enjoy then the invitations of every day, of every moment, to let go of our demand, our desire, our hunger for having more, please. Having it all, please.